We said what was going to happen on Friday. We said it on Thursday. You can watch the previous video, which way I was leaning. I didn't say it was for sure going to happen, but we were pretty much right on the money, and that is really impressive. And I'll tell you kind of that theory, what's going to, what we'll recap it and where it might go wrong and what's going to happen on Monday and where's happening with this stock market, because it is crazy. It is hard and it is rough. So let's talk about it. Let's recap first of all, and this is not financial advice, this is just my opinion. I am not a technical trader. We really usually do 10K videos analyzing companies and kind of looking at that perspective, and I give you my views, not necessarily a value or growth investor, just giving you all the information, my thoughts, and you can use that however you'd like. So stay tuned for some more of those videos, hopefully once the market cools down a bit. But anyway, let's look at the technicals. Let's recap. So we said over here that this 381 is going to become support resistance. We based that off of some Fibonacci numbers based off of this zigzag movement and some other things. You can watch those previous videos to figure out how we got to this 369 line, this 380 line, and this 403 line. But anyway, we had pretty much said that things were going to come, it came down on Thursday. We thought they would come back up on Friday. Why? Well, there was a few reasons. One reason was, look how oversold we were in the CCI. It came down pretty far. There's not been that many times that we've come down this far. There was just one time over here, and look what happened right after. Right, we came down that far in the red, and look at this jump. The opening started so much further down, and it kept going down. That's pretty crazy. The next day, though, we had an up day, just similar to ours. And, it tried to push up quite high, and it didn't. It ended back within the red. Not exactly like ours. It's a positive day, but within the previous red bar, sorry. And then the next day was a down day. And on Thursday, that's kind of what my prognosis was, what was going to happen on Friday and Monday. We're going to have Friday be an up day and Monday be a down day. Is that still possible? Is that still what's going to happen? Well, there's a little bit of a fly in the ointment. Now, the other part that I thought that would really help that case of what I was speaking about was the fact that we had this down day below the 50-day moving average. And so I thought that there's a good chance we're going to move right above it. And we moved actually quite further past it, right? I thought that we'd encounter the 381 as resistance and we'd settle around that 50-day moving average. And then I thought from there we'd have another down day to the 369 line. And then from there we could move back up above the 50-day moving average. That's kind of what I expected. Very similar to here. It comes down and then maybe finishes. So it would come down on Monday and then come back up around here. And then we could finish on Tuesday above the 50-day moving average. No one's too scared. This is kind of normal behavior, not the end of the world. But things did not quite happen exactly as I expected. And so that's a little bit of a fly in the ointment. Now, I do want to point out right over here, this red line has really passed into the trend. This is a trend indicator, the red line, the ADX, and it's moved between the negative selling pressure and the positive blue line, the buying pressure. And so that shows a stronger trend. Now, to be fair, it's not yet above 20 based off of the settings that I have anyway. It's not above 20. And so since it's not above 20, it's not exactly a strong trend. It's showing a trend, and we'll talk about that trend because it's really important. And I had said on Thursday that I thought that we'd have the positive day, and in fact, we might, if we wanted to go further up in direction, we want to see the blue line come up further than this red line, so the trend was no longer in between the two lines. But so, I did not expect this one, not at all. What had happened is we had fewer buyers, people buying S&P 500 on Friday, at least according to the directional movement indicator. So why did we go up? Well, there were a lot fewer sellers on Friday. And so since we had fewer people selling on Friday, we had a positive day. So, sadly, the trend is still between these two lines. So, that really does support this idea that now we have the chance to go a little bit further down in the stock market and have a negative day, and it's not the end of the world. Why? Because we're not starting from an oversold position. You see over here, we were oversold. I assume we'd go back up, just like over here, and then we could dip back down. Now we're going to have to dip quite a ways down to get to 369, so I'm not sure we're going to get all the way there. We'll have to see exactly what happens. And if we have 2 down days in a row, so one day below the 50-day moving average and another one even further below than that, unless it comes back up, and that's really what's going to have to happen, I think, or I shouldn't say have to happen, but that's kind of where I'm leaning right now. Except the one fly in the ointment, the one problem is that we'll have a down day, and either we're going to get down to 369 on Monday and come back up, or we're going to get down below the 50-day moving average, so maybe somewhere around here, 375, wherever it is, maybe not as far below as the previous days, and then we're going to have another down day to 369, and then come right back up on Tuesday, and get above the 50-day moving average, right? That's going to be important, I think, for people. It's not the end of the world if it doesn't, but I think that's going to be important. Now, of course, if we go too far down, if we move past the 369, then it's a little scary. Yeah, we'll have some support and resistance around this 360 area, but we're probably coming down to the 352 area, just around here. Because of these two tops over here, it's very possible we come back down over here, and this is eerily close to this 200-day moving average. So even if it does come down this far, stock market could still shoot right back up. That is totally possible for that to happen. I'm not sure it's going to come down this far. If it comes down to 369, I think it's still likely to come back up. I do want to point out, and we pointed it out, this left shoulder, this head, and if we have a right shoulder form, well, then we might come down to this 200-day moving average anyway. But nevertheless, I'm still kind of holding to this kind of general downward trend, either one day and then back up, or 2 days, as I just described. If it's worse than that, meaning, what's worse than that? If it has one down day and then a second down day that ends lower than the previous down day, then unless 369 is going to hold as support, but if we have those 2 days confirming a negative trend, that's going to scare me enough that we might actually move down to this 350, and we'll come back to that, I suppose. I seem to be making these videos on a regular basis now, just because of how crazy this market is. Okay, but let's move in, because there is one fly in the ointment with everything I'm saying. Well, maybe not just one, but one major one, and I think it's really important. So let's zoom into the 1 month here. And this is really important. We have this trend that's going negative. Well, we've broken it. Now, I thought we wouldn't break it by so much, and so we could come back into this trend. And guess where this trend channel will end up? Look at this, 369. So that's kind of what I was expecting. Everything, all the cards were kind of coming together. That's not what happened. Well, not exactly, right? So my 1 day prediction was kind of right. We got around here, and we moved even further past. I said that was obviously possible, and if we did, we might even move further up. And that, to me, is a little bit scary, that we're going to move so fast up that we might, just come right back down. You'll have to, ride the waves. Why do I think it's going to go so far up now that we've broken this trend, this negative downward trend? And this channel was just something I was playing with on Friday. We could probably get rid of it. I think that it's going to actually go up quite steeply. Why? Well, look what has happened every other time. Look, we had this channel. We broke it, quite a move down. And before it, this channel. And before it, this channel. So because of the volatility, now it hasn't always been like that, but because of the volatility of the S&P, how fast it's been moving, well, if it continues doing exactly that, well, we're expecting to go, back up here. Or further maybe in 1 day. And so, that's to me a little bit crazy, but totally possible based off of the market. And so it's really hard for me to predict what's going to happen. And so I'm not saying I have no clue. What I am saying is I am leaning towards either Monday coming down here or Tuesday coming down here. I'm still going with that kind of a interpretation. Sadly, at the end of the day, that was way more likely if we had finished over here, right? If we had finished below and this was going to be resistance, even if we broke above it, I thought, it could still come down. But now, wow, we moved quite a bit above so it's support. We've moved quite far from this channel, so maybe people aren't expecting this channel anymore. So now I don't even know what's going to happen. It's a little bit scary. Now, of course, Thursday, we started from pretty much the same point, and yes, we moved down quite a bit, and so that's exactly what could happen on Monday. And so I'm still leaning that way, but it's a lot less certain than it would have been had we been a lot lower. Now, I know what you're probably saying. Hey, but we have that 2 trillion package that was passed, or 1.9, whatever, and a lot of that stimulus money from the last time went into the stock market. At least that's what people say, and that's what people are going to expect to happen. And so, that's a fundamental reason we're going to shoot up. So not only do we have this trend channel breaking here, saying we're going to shoot up, but now we have the package, hey, that we're on our way. That's totally possible. The only flip side of that is if $2 trillion of money is coming into the market or into people's hands, that will cause inflation to go up. If inflation goes up, the 10-year note, the 10-year treasury will probably require more interest, and that spooks the market. That's what happened on Thursday, especially when Jerome Powell was talking. He said that inflation could go up to 3%. They're not so worried about that. That's not their main concern. And I think the Federal Reserve has always kind of seen 2% as the target, but at least the Canadian bank, they allow it to go between to 1% inflation or 3% inflation. They don't force it at 2%. That's just their ideal rate. So I don't even think that was such new information, but people really reacted quite strongly to that. And the market went down quite a bit while he was speaking. So people are associating it with Jerome Powell because the 10-year went up in terms of the rate of interest that's required to get that that people were willing to lend for 10 years. And why is that important, by the way? Just to give you that fundamental, because we should have a macro video on its own. But the idea is if my money is worth less in 10 years than today, well, if I'm going to lend you money, I need more money back. I need more money back because my money is going to be worth less. So if there's 3% inflation or 2% inflation, well, I'm going to need a higher interest rate for me to lend you the money. Now, he didn't say it was going to go to 3%, so maybe 1.6, which is where it went to, is good enough, I suppose. Why? Because what he implied was it wasn't going to be 3% for 10 years, right? So that interest rate doesn't have to be at 3%, because presumably 3% is the high amount of inflation based off of what Powell was talking about. And so many times it might even be below 2%. It might be 1% for the next 10 years, or somewhere in the next 10 years. And so that's why maybe 1.6 is just, doesn't have to go that high just because he said 3%. The yield doesn't have to go to 3%. Interest rate doesn't have to go to 3%. So that's pretty much what happened. And so if $2 trillion is coming into the market, people might expect more inflation. People might require a higher interest rate on that 10-year, right? And so that fundamental reasoning of $2 trillion coming in might not be such a positive thing at the end of the day for the stock market, at least in the short run, before people get the money and invest it. Well, we'll have to see exactly how people look at it. My guess is, and I have this kind of gut feeling that people will take that $2 trillion stimulus package coming in being news that, hey, the market's going up, all that money's coming into the market, and so they're going to shoot the, things might actually move up at the beginning of the day. And I fear that the 10-year note, when that thing goes up in interest rates even more, if the Fed doesn't step in, and I don't think they will, because inflation is going up, that 1.5% or might be really a 0% return, meaning let's say they give you $1 million today, they might get, let's say, $1.3 million 10 years from now. I'm just random number in my head. But that $1.3 million might be worth the exact $1 million. You might be able to buy the exact same thing 10 years from now because of inflation. And so I don't know if the Fed's going to step in and lower that rate. The only reason they would is because of the stock market, because people will get spooked. But anyway, my point is, I think there's a chance it'll move up in the morning because of that fundamental reasoning of $2 trillion. When the 10-year note, if it's auctioned and comes, whenever that auction comes up, and the yield, the interest rate spikes, well, then we might see things go negative. And if we see things go negative enough, past the 381, well, then we're getting close to this channel. And that's really the key. What happens tomorrow morning? The further we move and the faster we move in the positive direction, the less likely we have to coming past the 380, which is going to be acting as support, and the less likely people will think that we're going to move below the 50-day moving average, and the less likely people will think, well, coming back into this channel. So really it'll depend, I suppose, on how positive it moves in the morning before maybe some of the ramifications of all these policies kind of hit. So that's kind of my feeling. I think that, yeah, we might move positive, but unless we move really positive, I'm kind of feeling like we're coming down in the market, and we're coming down either in 1 day or 2 days to 369. And I don't necessarily think it's the end of the world. You should prepare yourself. Once again, not financial advice. You choose if you want to buy the dip, but at the end of the day, if we move to 369, like I said, there's a possibility we move to 350. And if we move to 350, who knows where we go from there? But I still think it's not the end of the world. And we'll have to talk about it when we get there. And we've been pretty accurate so far, which is pretty nice. But like I said, I'm not saying things are definite. I'm just leaning one way. And so we'll have to see what happens in the market. And this is just my opinion. You let me know what you think is going to happen, because I think that's really important for me to hear from other people what they think is happening. And you know, I'm giving you my advice. Or not advice. Oh, really important. Not advice. But I'm giving you what I'm thinking about what's happening, what I'm expecting, where my moves are. And you know, one bull case for this going even further up tomorrow is, look at Tesla. It is so oversold right now. Now, of course, if it goes further down, and it did briefly before coming back up, well, we could be moving back down to this level over here, although the 200-day moving average might support it. But like I said, look at this red trend line. It's at 40. Maybe it's a little exhausted. And if we just zoom into the 1 month, you can see that I had this kind of short channel, this short trend line channel. Well, I have this bigger trend line channel, and so we might be moving up before we move back down in Tesla if something doesn't change in terms of the trends. That's kind of what I'm expecting. That in fact we do move up, and you know, maybe we'll get around this 660 area. I don't know exactly where in this line, you know, things happen. You know, feel free to draw the trend line that you kind of see, because you know, this is not, so I'm not trying to get it so precise personally. So this would be a bull case that Tesla tomorrow will move up, in fact, especially based on the day trading and swing trading. And some of the other stocks, you know, they have room. Well, Amazon maybe has room to move down. I'm not sure. It doesn't even make sense to me that it's moving this way, but that's the trend. Trend is your friend. But Nvidia, for example, has room to move up even in the negative trend. And so that would be, those types of stocks are kind of the bull case that all these things are oversold still, and they could push everything up. And like I said, you had these channels, when they break positive. And yet, with all that, I'm still kind of sticking with leaning towards my Thursday opinion that we're going to hit towards the 369. Not the end of the world if it does, but it's very, very possible that we keep moving up based off of, like I just said, all of those stocks that are oversold, all of this positive information about the 2 trillion stimulus. And so unless there's that 10-year note that kind of spooks the market, well, that's what I think is going to be the thing that spooks the market anyway. Who knows what will spook people? So really, it's almost up in the air what will happen. And I said on Thursday, I'm not even sure the stock market knows, except I will say that if I was really going to have to be forced to pick, you know, I've already told you which way I'm leaning. But it's, at this point, a lot of a slight lean compared to if we had finished over here. So we'll really have to see what happens. And I guess you know my perspective, and it's always helpful for me to hear yours. So please like, comment, subscribe. I really appreciate it. And let me know what you think, and if you like these videos, or if you could care less. Thanks so much, and good luck trading.